The mid-afternoon sun rested gently over the high desert, casting long blades of light between the towering cottonwoods that guarded the stream. Their leaves shimmered in the warm breeze, whispering songs of old spirits. This place and Nalan's sanctuary had always been special. Long before she was born, her elders said the waters flowed with blessings, a gift from the earth for those burdened with sorrow. Today, she needed those blessings more than ever. Nalan knelt on the smooth river stones, her fingers grazing the cool, glass-like surface. The water reflected her face, but she scarcely recognized the woman looking back. Grief had reshaped her. The laughter that once danced in her eyes had dimmed. The weight of loss lingered on her shoulders like a heavy blanket. Not long ago, she had walked these hills with her parents, their voices full of pride and guidance. Her father taught her the tracks of animals, her mother the songs to thank the land. But raiders from beyond the mountains had taken them, swift as a storm, brutal as fire. Their absence haunted her waking hours, as if part of her heart had been carved out and scattered on the wind. Here at the stream, she hoped to remember without breaking. She loosened the ties of her clothing and stepped into the water. A shiver ran through her, not of cold, but of renewal. The water wrapped around her like an embrace, lifting a part of her pain away. She closed her eyes and let the current slide through her fingers, imagining the spirits carrying her grief downstream, leaving only strength behind. For a moment, she felt peace, but she was not alone. Across the rocks and trees, hidden in shadow yet alert as a hawk, Taza surveyed the landscape. He had been tracking unfamiliar tracks for miles, heavy boot prints sharp-edged and careless. Outsiders had crossed sacred land. He knew what such men wanted when they came so close to Apache waters, and blood roared in his ears at the thought. When he first noticed Nalan bathing, he had turned his eyes away immediately. He was a guard of the land, not a prowler of women. But the danger nearby forced him to stay close. His posture remained rigid, respectful, but every muscle was coiled, ready to strike if needed. Taza knew Nalan from afar. She was the daughter of brave parents, both respected and beloved. Her mother's songs had guided dances under the moon. Her father's spear had defended their people more times than anyone could count. Their loss had struck the tribe like a spear to the heart. Seeing Nalan alone, vulnerable in the waters, stirred something fierce inside him. Not desire, though she was undeniably beautiful. Not pity, for she was stronger than many warriors he knew. It was duty, a sacred instinct to protect. He stepped forward, making just enough sound to alert her before he spoke. Nalan, her breath caught. She turned swiftly, water swirling around her as she crossed her arms over her chest. Seeing who it was, she relaxed only slightly, though a spark of embarrassment flickered in her cheeks. Taza, why are you here? Her tone held both suspicion and curiosity. You should not be alone, he replied, eyes still turned away. There are tracks. Men who do not belong. Nalan's heart tightened. Fear tried to creep in, but she pushed it back. She would not live her life trembling. I needed time to think, she said, voice gentler. This place helps me breathe. I honor that, Taza murmured. But I will not let harm come to you. Not here. Not ever. Those words, simple, steady, hit her harder than she expected. Someone was looking out for her, even when she felt like a shadow drifting through the world. Her throat tightened, emotion welling unexpectedly. The wind changed direction. Taza stiffened, head lifting sharply. The danger was close. Too close. Nalan could see the shift in him. Warrior, protector. A shield made of muscle and bone and unwavering loyalty. She whispered, What do you sense? Taza's hand brushed the hilt of his blade and he stepped toward the trees. Trouble, he said. Stay behind me. In that moment, the sacred stream no longer felt like a refuge. It became the first battleground in a fight that would change both of their lives forever. Nalan stepped out of the stream, the droplets sliding down her skin like threads of liquid silver. She dressed quickly, her fingers trembling, not from the cool air but from the tension thickening around them. The light-hearted solace she had briefly found was gone, replaced by a humming awareness that danger crept closer with every heartbeat. Taza remained a short distance away, back rigid, gaze locked on the tree line. He was tall and lean, every movement controlled with the grace of a mountain cat. His braids, bound with leather thongs, brushed his shoulders as he listened to the forest with fierce attentiveness. Nalan wrapped her blanket around her, watching him. You came for me? She asked softly. I came for signs, he replied. But they led me to you." His voice held no boast, only simple truth. She studied him a moment longer. This warrior who'd always stood a little apart from the others, as if the weight of his purpose made space around him. Taza finally turned to face her. Their eyes met. For a breath, the world stilled. Nalin had always seen Taza as the silent one, strong, reserved, speaking only when needed. But standing before her now, she saw something else in him. Conviction. A quiet oath already forming in his heart, though he had yet to speak it. He noticed the way she studied him and cleared his throat awkwardly. "I did not mean to interrupt your time with the spirits." "You didn't interrupt," she replied. "You just startled me." A faint smile played at her lips. "And perhaps saved me." Taza nodded once, accepting the gratitude but not dwelling on it. He turned his attention again to the brush along the stream's edge. "They were here," he murmured, crouching to the ground. His fingers traced a bent reed, a scuffed footprint in the mud, evidence left by careless boots. More than one. Men who carry guns made of cold iron, not crafted by hand. Nalin bent beside him, her hair falling over her shoulder as she looked at the tracks. How close were they? Close enough to hear laughter, he said grimly. Close enough to smell the smoke of their clothes. A chill slid through her, but she hid it. She had been taught never to show fear, not to others and especially not to those who wished to harm her. Taza stood again, towering protectively. "We must move. They follow the river for a reason." Nalin hesitated, glancing back at the water. "This place is sacred," she whispered. "A part of me hoped harm could not reach here." Taza's voice softened. "The spirits protect us, but they also gave us the strength to fight." She nodded, accepting his meaning. Strength was not in silence or tears withheld, it was in standing, walking, surviving. They started through the brush, her steps quiet behind his. Every so often he would lift his hand, signaling a pause so he could listen. Nalin noticed how he placed himself between her and any possible danger. Even when the path narrowed, he would take the outer edge, ensuring his body shielded hers. No one had protected her like this since her parents. It stirred something confusing inside her. Fear, gratitude, hope. Emotions she had not dared to feel, wrapped together like strands of a single cord. As they crossed a sunlit clearing, she finally spoke what had been building in her chest. "Why do you care what happens to me, Taza?" He stopped, turning to her fully. "Because you are one of us," he said. "Because the blood of brave hearts runs through you. Because the tribe cannot lose another soul." He paused, eyes darkening with something deeper. "And because I would not wish you to face danger alone." Nalin swallowed. She wanted to tease him, lighten the moment, but the sincerity in his voice held her still. "You speak as if it is a promise," she said. "It is." The words were a vow sealed with the strength of mountains. Before she could respond, a rustle in the brush snapped Taza's attention back to alertness. He stepped forward, blade drawn. Nalin whispered, "Are they here?" Taza did not look back at her, but his voice was iron. "They are hunting," he said, "but they do not yet know who hunts them in return." The canyon walls narrowed around them as Taza led Nalin deeper into the wilderness. The air grew still, as if the land itself listened for approaching footsteps. High above, a hawk circled lazily, a silent observer, its hunting cry swallowed by the rocky cliffs. Nalin stayed close, her footsteps light but steady. Despite fear tugging at the corners of her mind, she refused to show weakness. Her parents had raised her to be many things, brave, thoughtful, unyielding, but most of all alive. "We are close to the border of our territory," Taza murmured. "Raiders will search harder. They know there is much to steal." She tensed at his wording. Not who but what raiders sought: horses, supplies, even people. The memory of her parents' capture flickered like lightning behind her eyes, sharp and sudden. Taza noticed her breathing quicken. Without facing her, he spoke gently. "You are not alone now, Nalin." She didn't know whether he meant to comfort her or himself, but the words eased something tight inside her chest. A gust of wind stirred the dust. Taza froze, lifting a closed fist for her to stop. His other hand slid to the worn handle of his blade. Nalin followed his gaze up the canyon wall where stones had fallen. Not from the wind, but from careless footsteps above. Raiders. Watching. Taza's voice dropped to a whisper. "There are eyes upon us." Nalin's fingers twitched toward the hidden knife strapped to her thigh beneath her blanket. Her mother's knife. The one thing she refused to let be taken. Taza looked at her briefly, his dark eyes reflecting both warning and admiration. "You carry a weapon," he stated. "I carry a memory," she corrected. He nodded once, respect. Pure and simple. A crack of dry wood echoed overhead, and Taza grabbed Nalan's hand, tugging her into the shadow of a boulder just before a rifle shot rang out, sharp, splitting the air. Stone shards exploded from the rock inches from Nalan's face. Her heart lurched, but fear did not take her. Instinct did. She pressed her back to the stone, scanning the edges of the cliffs. "How many?" She whispered. "3, maybe 4. Taza's jaw tightened. "But they are clumsy." Another bullet ricocheted down the canyon wall, a scream following it. One of the raiders, likely struck by his own allies' careless aim. "They are not here for a fight," Taza said. "They are here to take a prize and run." His meaning was clear. Her Nalan's pulse raced, but she forced her breathing slow. "You should go," she whispered fiercely. "I will not be the reason you die." Taza turned to her fully. And for the first time, his carefully guarded expression cracked open. "You are the reason I will live." Before she could respond, he squeezed her hand, grounding her, then moved. Swift as a cougar, he darted from cover to cover, drawing the raider's attention, giving Nalan precious seconds to think. Courage doesn't survive by hiding. She heard her father's voice. "Act." She pulled her knife, gripping the worn handle. Positioning herself near the canyon wall, she searched for movement. A shadow, the shape of a man, crept closer, unaware he was still being hunted. She waited. Breath, stillness, movement. When he lunged, she struck. A quick slash to his arm. He cried out, dropping his gun. His surprise became rage, but Nalan was already moving, dodging behind Taza as the warrior finished the fight with a single decisive blow. Silence crashed down. Only 2 raiders remained, and they fled, curses trailing behind them like dust. The canyon breathed again. Taza stood tall, chest rising and falling with controlled breaths, a thin scrape of blood marking his shoulder. He glanced at Nalan, seeing not a frightened woman but a fighter reborn. "You handled yourself as a warrior," he said. Nalan wiped her blade clean, head high. "I learned from the best. Even when they're gone," he understood. Loss was a language they both spoke. A long pause stretched between them, charged, fragile, alive. In the echoing canyon, a bond deeper than duty began to root itself firmly in the earth beneath their feet. "From this moment," Taza said quietly, "no shadow will touch you while I draw breath." Nalan met his gaze unafraid. "And I will not walk behind you. I will walk with you." The sun dipped lower, casting long shadow. But now, the darkness did not feel as threatening, not with 2 hearts braced to face it together. They traveled onward as the sun sank toward the horizon, bathing the canyon walls in colors of amber and ember. The long shadows stretched ahead of them, reminding Nalan that night would soon blanket the land. And with night came more danger. Taza moved with confidence, though each step favored his left side. The scrape along his shoulder was not deep, but every injury in the wild demanded caution. Raiders would not be the only predators stalking the dark. Nalan kept pace beside him, no longer willing to trail behind like someone in need of rescue. But with every stride she noticed the slight hitch in his breathing, the price he had paid to protect her. "Let me see your wound," she insisted finally. "It is nothing," he replied, eyes scanning the path ahead. "If it slows you, then it is something." Taza hesitated, muscles tensing beneath his skin. He was a warrior, trained to push aside pain. To admit weakness was a shame few in their tribe allowed themselves. But when he looked at her, he saw not pity, only concern. He relented. They stopped near a cluster of sagebrush, the scent of earth and cleansing herbs rising with the breeze. Taza removed his vest slowly, revealing the scratch along his shoulder, red and raw but not life-threatening. Nalan dipped a strip of cloth into her water pouch and carefully cleaned the wound. He didn't flinch, but she felt the tension in him. Strength held taut. "You shielded me without hesitation," she said quietly. "Even before I knew the danger." His gaze dropped to her hands working diligently against his skin. "I gave my word." "Words are easy," she countered gently. Actions are harder. A faint smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, the smallest crack in his hard exterior. Then I will be remembered for my actions. When she finished, she tied the cloth securely around his shoulder. Their hands brushed, a light touch, accidental but sparking a current between them. She straightened, feeling warmth rise in her cheeks. Taza stood as well, drawing a breath that sounded slightly steadier. "We will reach safer ground before night," he said. "We?" she echoed, arching a brow. "You think I would leave you now?" His voice deepened, solemn and unbreakable. "I swore to protect you with my life." Nalin stepped closer, her expression fierce. "And I did not ask for such a vow. You did not need to." She stared at him, heart pounding. No one had ever spoken to her with such certainty. The vow he made wasn't tradition. It wasn't command. It was chosen, freely and fully. "Taza," she whispered, searching his eyes for the reason behind such devotion. "Do you protect me because you must, or because you wish to?" His breath hitched, the question catching him off balance. Before he could form an answer, a rustle from nearby sent both of them into motion. Nalin grabbed her knife. Taza stepped in front of her, blade at the ready. But instead of raiders, a small pronghorn antelope emerged, pausing long enough to study them before bounding off into the dusk. The tension eased, but neither lowered their guard completely. "There will be no peace until we reach higher ground," Taza said. "We will shelter in the old watchpost. My father built it when I was a boy. His father, a warrior who had fallen in battle years ago, remained a shadow in Taza's life." Nalin could hear the lingering grief in his tone, familiar and shared. "You follow his path," she said softly. Taza shook his head. "I try to forge my own." She admired that. Bravery not just in battle, but in identity. Together they continued toward the rising path ahead, the canyon giving way to open land and deeper skies. The stars began to crown the heavens one by one, ancient and watchful. Nalin walked strong at Taza's side, not behind, not ahead. Two paths, now joined, duty, and something more. Still unspoken, but burning steady between them. Night descended like a curtain of velvet, studded with countless stars. The moon, round and luminous, cast a silver glow over the land, bright enough that they could still see the path without torchlight. The old watchpost Taza spoke of sat nestled against a ridge of boulders, partly hidden by dense shrubs. Its wooden frame had weathered many seasons, but it still stood strong, a silent guardian from another time. "This place kept our hunters safe," Taza explained as he checked the perimeter. "My father believed every warrior should create something that protects the tribe even after his death." Nalin touched the worn doorway with reverence. He succeeded. Inside, the shelter was simple, a fire pit of stone and a few blankets folded neatly in a corner. Dust coated the surfaces, but everything felt preserved, sacred somehow. Taza gathered dry wood and coaxed a flame to life. Soon, orange and gold danced over the walls, casting flickering shadows that seemed to tell stories of the past. Nalin sat across from him, drawing her knees close to keep warm. The heat felt like a blessing after the tension of the day. "You have walked this land since you were a boy," she said, always watching. Always alone. He didn't answer at first. His gaze was lost in the fire's glow, memories crackling louder than the wood. "When I was 12, he finally said, voice low but steady, "my father stood where I sit now and told me something I never forgot. A warrior does not fight for himself. He fights for the living hearts behind him." He lifted his gaze to hers, letting the meaning settle between them. "You are one of those hearts now." The word struck her like a warm breeze, and surprising, gentle, and profoundly real. She didn't look away. Instead, she leaned slightly closer to the fire, and to him. "And who stands behind you, Taza?" she asked softly. "Who watches for the watcher?" He hesitated, expression shifting, not discomfort but revelation. "Maybe you do," he said. Nalin's breath caught. She wasn't sure what she expected, but it wasn't that. Admission delivered with quiet bravery. The kind that meant something. She reached into her satchel and pulled out a small leather pouch. From it, she took crushed sage and sprinkled it over the fire. The flames hissed, then rose, bright and fragrant. "My mother taught me this," she said. "Sage keeps away unwanted spirits and strengthens the bonds between the living." The smoke curled upward, sweet and earthy. Taza inhaled the scent like a promise. I know what you lost, he said carefully, but you are still here. Your spirit is not broken. Sometimes I feel it is cracked, she whispered. He shook his head. Cracks let the light through. For a moment, silence, mum, but not empty. Full charged protective, the fire warmed the space. But something deeper warmed Nalan. The safety of his presence, the way he spoke to her as an equal, not a burden. She watched him unwind his braids to rest more comfortably, a rare vulnerability. The warrior allowed himself to breathe, to simply exist beside her under the moon's watch. She realized then, he was not just protecting her. She was becoming a reason he fought. Taza lay back, eyes tracing constellations. After a quiet moment, he spoke. The moon reminds us that even in darkness, light returns. We endure. Nalan settled beside him, not touching, but close enough that the heat of his shoulder brushed the air between them. And if the darkness tries to take us, she murmured. Taza turned his head slightly, meeting her gaze with calm certainty. Then it will have to face us both. Out in the distance, a lone coyote howled, a song of wild things and survival. The fire crackled, the night air wrapped around them like a blanket woven by the stars. Two souls, neither alone anymore, side by side under the same moon. The fire had dwindled to embers when Taza's eyes snapped open. He heard it before the night fully returned to his senses, the crunch of footsteps in dry brush. Not animal. Too heavy, too cautious. Raiders. Taza placed a steady hand on Nalan's arm. She woke instantly, silent and alert, her instincts sharpened by the day's events. One look at his expression was enough. Danger was here. He signaled her to stay low. She reached for her mother's knife. No trembling, only purpose. Outside, shadows shifted between the boulders. The faint metallic clink of a rifle being cocked echoed through the night. They were surrounded. Taza's mind worked quickly. The shelter was safe, but also a trap if they stayed. He motioned toward the back where a narrow exit lay hidden by brush. He whispered, barely audible, "Follow me. Do not fall behind." They slipped through the hidden opening just as a raider kicked in the front entrance. The crash of wood shattered the quiet, followed by angry shouts. "Tazo! Apache!" A voice thick with a foreign accent commanded. "Show yourself." Taza did not answer. Silence was his weapon. The nighttime terrain became their shield as they crept along the ridge. But the raiders had torches, fiery beacons moving like hungry wolves through the brush. One torch swung toward their direction. Too close. "We must separate," Taza breathed. "They want you. If they think I am alone, they will follow me." Nalan's heart slammed against her ribs. "You think I will leave you to die?" "I think you are too smart to be captured," he replied, urgency tightening his tone. But she shook her head, eyes fierce. "You swore to protect me. I swore to walk with you. Do not ask me to break my word." The briefest flash of pride lit Taza's eyes. Then survival regained control. A shout rang out. One raider had spotted movement. Taza reacted instantly. Pushing, Nalan behind a boulder as bullets cracked through the darkness. Flames from dropping torches lit the scene in wild flashes. Taza lunged forward, striking a raider before the man could raise his weapon again. The two grappled, growls and grunts mixing with the roar of gunfire. Nalan's breath caught. Fear wanted to root her in place. But fear had taken enough from her. She sprang from cover, knife glinting under moonlight. Charging another raider who aimed his rifle at Taza's back, she slashed the barrel aside and kicked him hard in the knee. He dropped, and she drove her blade into his arm, disarming him completely. "You fight like fire," Taza yelled, both shocked and grateful as he delivered the final blow to his attacker. But the fight was not done. 3 more raiders closed in, driven by greed and rage. The canyon amplified their shouts, echoing like a storm brewing around them. Nalan braced herself. Breathing fast, Taza positioned himself before her, wounded, panting on a true shield of flesh and determination. Boom! A gunshot split the air. Too close. Taza staggered. The bullet grazed his hip, tearing fabric and flesh alike. He gritted his teeth, refusing to fall. The raiders closed their circle, smirking, confident that they had trapped their quarry. Nalan gripped Taza's arm, ready to stand with him in their last moments. "I am not afraid," she whispered. Taza looked at her with something raw, fierce. Not fear, not regret, but hope. No, not anymore, he said. And then, salvation roared in the sky. The hawk from earlier, the silent watcher, screeched overhead. The distraction was enough. Taza seized the moment, throwing a fistful of sand into the nearest raider's face. In the chaos, he grabbed Nalin's hand. Run! They sprinted along the ridge as bullets chased them through the dark. Rocks tumbled underfoot, but momentum and will kept them upright. Behind them, torches flickered frantically, the hunt still on. But they were alive. Together. And together they would escape the jaws of the night. The moonlit ridge stretched ahead like a silver serpent, but Taza's strides grew uneven. Each step dragged a little more than the last. Blood soaked through the torn hide at his hip, leaving a dark trail on the rocky ground. Taza, Nalin whispered, breathless from the sprint. You're bleeding too much. He didn't answer, could not waste breath when every drop of strength counted. His focus stayed locked forward, listening for the shouts behind them, feeling the earth beneath his feet, predicting where danger would strike next. But even a warrior has limits. His knee buckled. Nalin caught him just in time, her arms struggling to support the weight of a man who had always seemed made of stone and iron. His eyes squeezed shut for a heartbeat, pain breaking through his discipline. You can't keep going like this, she said urgently. We must reach the trees, he forced out, jaw clenched. We must stop the bleeding, she countered with equal firmness. Or the forest will become your grave. Their gazes locked, neither willing to yield. But when a tremor of weakness passed through his body, Taza relented, collapsing to one knee. Nalin guided him behind a boulder half covered in sagebrush, a pocket of shadow shielding them from view. Through the dark, distant voices echoed, frustrated raiders arguing over tracks in the dirt. They hadn't yet realized their quarry had stopped. Nalin knelt beside Taza, her hands steady though her heart thundered. She carefully peeled back the blood-soaked hide. The bullet had grazed deep, tearing flesh, but missing the bone. Relief softened her shoulders, but only slightly. You risked too much, she murmured. I did only what honor demanded, he replied, voice strained but unwavering. You are under my protection. Her fingers froze. Slowly, she lifted her eyes to his. And you are under mine. He stared, at her, truly stared, and in that look she felt the ground shift between them. No longer protector and protected, but equals bound by choice. Nalin ripped a strip from her own clothing and pressed it against the wound. Taza exhaled sharply, knuckles whitening against the ground. Hold still, she instructed. I am still, he grunted. You are trembling like a newborn colt. Despite the pain, a faint smirk touched his lips. Do not mistake exhaustion for weakness. I mistake nothing, she said. I know exactly who you are. She tied the cloth tightly around his hip, using her knee as leverage. Taza bit down on a groan, sweat glistening at his temple. When she finished, she brushed dirt from his cheek, a small, unplanned gesture. His eyes softened at the touch, his breath evening out. I should be standing, he muttered, frustrated by his own body. You will stand again, she assured him. But right now, you must let me be the warrior. The words struck him like an arrow, yet instead of pain, they brought peace. He nodded, accepting what pride had prevented him from saying earlier. He needed her. Nalin listened to the wind, the shifting earth, the distant raiders who still prowled like wolves denied their prey. They would search until dawn, but they would not find easy targets. She slid Taza's arm over her shoulders, helping him rise. Lean on me, she said. I am heavy, he warned. I am stronger than you think. Her tone left no room for argument. Together they walked into the shelter of trees, slowly, painfully, but with purpose. The forest welcomed them, hiding their presence beneath its dark canopy. When they reached a hollow between two great pines, Taza collapsed again, breath ragged. Nalin knelt, her hands still wrapped around his arm. Rest, she told him gently. His eyes closed, not in defeat, but trust. Before sleep claimed him, he managed to whisper, "Do not leave my side." Her hand found his, strong and sure. "I will stay," she vowed, "always." And under the shadow of the ancient pines, a warrior laid down his weapons, and a woman lifted hers. The forest seemed alive, whispering through the leaves and shifting branches as if it carried a voice older than time. Nalan supported Taza as they moved deeper into the grove, each step carefully measured. The pain in his hip was evident in every stumble, but his eyes still scanned the shadows, alert as ever. "This place," Nalan murmured, looking around, "feels sacred." Taza nodded, his breathing steadying slightly. "It has been used for generations, hunters, warriors, even our elders. The spirits linger here." The trees thickened, their roots curling above the ground like the fingers of ancient guardians. Light filtered down through the canopy, catching on moss and the dewdrops clinging to leaves, turning the grove into a cathedral of green and gold. Nalan inhaled the damp, earthy scent, a mixture of life and old magic. They came to a small clearing where flat stones had been arranged in a circle, likely as an altar or gathering place. Symbols were carved into the rocks, spirals, crescents, and marks representing the sun, moon, and stars. Nalan traced them with her fingers, feeling the deep pulse of history beneath her touch. "The elders called this a place of guidance," Taza said. "When you feel lost, the spirits show the path." Nalan sank to her knees, placing Taza beside her. "Do you believe the spirits guide us?" she asked softly. "I have lived my life following their signs," he replied, eyes sweeping the grove. "They are never wrong. Sometimes their guidance is subtle. Sometimes it is forceful. But it is always for balance." She nodded, feeling a calmness settle over her, a stark contrast to the chaos of the ambush and the weight of their injuries. Closing her eyes, she whispered a prayer, asking for wisdom, courage, and protection for them both. Taza followed her lead, his hands folded over his knees, murmuring words older than any living memory. Then, faintly at first, a sound seemed to rise from the stones themselves, a soft, almost musical hum that grew steadily until it became a rhythm in tune with their hearts. Nalan opened her eyes. Taza's dark gaze met hers, wide with awe. "Do you feel that?" she whispered. "It is guidance," Taza said, voice reverent. "The spirits are telling us to trust one another, to act together." They studied the symbols, and in the flicker of moonlight through the canopy, they noticed a pattern, a spiral leading from the center stone toward a narrow path between two great oaks. The spirits had marked a safe way forward. Nalan smiled faintly, glancing at Taza. "I think they are telling us that we are meant to walk this path together, not as protector and protected, but as partners." Taza's lips parted, and he shook his head slightly. "I did not expect this." His hand brushed hers, a tentative connection that spoke of trust, hope, and something more delicate, yet unbreakable. "You never know what the spirits will offer," Nalan replied. "Sometimes the lesson is not just about survival. It is about courage, connection, and heart." Taza exhaled slowly, letting the tension drain from his body. "Then I am grateful for their lesson," he murmured, voice low but steady. "And for you." The night deepened around them, yet it no longer carried fear. Instead, it wrapped them in a cocoon of quiet strength. Each star above seemed to pulse in response to the promise forming between them, a promise to face what lay ahead, together, bound not only by blood and duty, but by something far stronger, choice and respect. Nalan leaned back against the trunk of a massive oak, feeling Taza's presence at her side. No words were necessary. The grove itself seemed to whisper approval. The spirits had guided them, and now they would guide each other. The wind rustled through the leaves like the softest lullaby, carrying their hopes, their courage, and the quiet knowledge that together they were unstoppable. And under the watchful eyes of ancestors they rested, Warriors, companions, and hearts intertwined by fate. Dawn had not yet broken, and the forest was painted in shades of deep blue and silver. The night's tension had not fully faded. Taza's wound throbbed, and Nalan's muscles ached from supporting him. Yet they moved with purpose, knowing the raiders had not given up. Somewhere in the distance, broken voices and the harsh clatter of hooves carried over the hills. The predators were still hunting. They reached a small clearing, open enough that retreat was impossible, but narrow enough to control the battlefield. Taza leaned against a tree, steadying his breathing while Nalan scanned the tree line, knife at the ready. The spirits of the forest seemed to hold their breath as if waiting for the battle to unfold. "They'll come through the east," Taza whispered. "It's the only way they can flank us," Nalan nodded. "Then we make our stand here." Side by side they waited. When the first figure emerged from the shadows and a raider carrying a torch, Taza moved like lightning, striking with precision. Nalan followed instinctively, her knife slicing through the air, her movements coordinated with his as if they had practiced this for years. One raider fell. Another lunged at Nalan, but she ducked, slashing his arm and forcing him back. Taza intercepted another, knocking him to the ground with a heavy blow from the flat of his blade. Each strike, each parry spoke of their unspoken connection, their bodies moving in perfect rhythm despite exhaustion and pain. A gunshot cracked the air. Taza hissed as the bullet grazed his shoulder. Nalan grabbed a fallen branch and swung, knocking the rifle away before it could fire again. Together they fought, not as two individuals but as one force. The remaining raiders hesitated, realizing that they faced not prey, but a storm. The ferocity in Taza's eyes was mirrored in Nalan's, courage born from survival, strengthened by trust in something far deeper. "You fight well," Taza growled, sending a raider sprawling with a swift kick. "You taught me," Nalan replied, striking down another who tried to sneak behind them. A pause. Silence hung over the clearing. Both knew this was the moment. One decisive act could end the threat or invite death. From the corner of her eye, Nalan spotted a large boulder above the eastern approach. Signaling silently, she nodded to Taza. Together they moved toward it, forcing the remaining raiders into a confined spot. With a coordinated effort, Taza tackled one from the side while Nalan rolled the boulder, cutting off the other's escape. The raiders, trapped and disoriented, surrendered quickly. Their arrogance vanished in the face of Taza and Nalan's relentless teamwork. Breathing heavily, Taza leaned against Nalan, his strength finally giving way to fatigue. "We survived," he whispered. "Yes," she replied, a mixture of relief and triumph flooding her chest. "Because we stood together." For the first time in hours, they allowed themselves to lower their weapons. The morning sun began to peek through the treetops, bathing the clearing in gold. Shadows of the previous night's fear retreated as if chased by the light itself. Taza looked at Nalan, eyes softening. "You are incredible," he said, voice husky. "Not just brave, but unyielding." "And you," she replied, touching his cheek lightly, "are not alone anymore. Never again." The battle was over, but more importantly, they had discovered something far stronger than victory. Trust, respect, and an unbreakable bond. The adrenaline ebbed, replaced by a quiet understanding. This was more than survival. This was partnership. As they surveyed the clearing, the first rays of dawn spilled across the forest floor. Taza extended his hand. Nalan took it without hesitation. Their fingers intertwined, strength and warmth passing between them. The spirits of the forest seemed to murmur approval. The bond they had forged in danger and guided by ancestors was no longer fragile. It was unshakable. They stood side by side, watching the defeated raiders retreat. No words were needed. The final stand had ended, and both knew that whatever came next, they would face it together, as equals, as warriors, and as hearts joined by choice and courage. The forest exhaled with them, carrying the promise of new beginnings under the rising sun. The first full rays of sunlight spilled over the ridge, painting the forest in hues of gold and amber. The night's chaos was behind them, leaving only quiet and the gentle rustle of leaves in the morning breeze. Nalan and Taza stood together in the clearing, side by side, still catching their breath, still feeling the echo of the battle that had tested every fiber of their beings. Taza lowered his blade, letting it rest against the earth. He looked at Nalan, his dark eyes softening in the warmth of the new day. "We survived," he said quietly. "And we did it together." "Yes," Nalin replied, brushing the sweat and dust from her hair. Her eyes lingered on him, seeing not just the warrior who had saved her life, but the man who had trusted her enough to let her save him in return. The bond they shared had grown through fire and struggle, forged stronger than any blade. Taza reached for her hand. "I promised you my protection," he said, voice steady but now softer, more personal. "And I will keep that vow, always." Nalin's fingers tightened around his. "And I promise to walk beside you," she replied. "Not behind you, not just for your sake, but for mine as well." He smiled faintly, a rare, genuine expression that reached the depths of his eyes. "Then we are equals. In strength, in trust, in spirit." The forest seemed to echo their words, the wind moving through the trees like a quiet applause. Every rustle of leaves, every bird call seemed to bless the new path they would walk together. They began the trek back to their village, moving slowly but confidently. The terrain was familiar yet different now, colored by the events of the night, shaped by their shared ordeal. They passed through the grove where the spirits had guided them, and both paused for a moment, heads bowed, offering silent thanks. The ancestral wisdom that had protected them, and the courage they had discovered in each other, felt sacred. As they approached the edge of the forest, the sound of their people reached them, voices calling, children laughing, the soft neighing of horses. The village had awoken, unaware of the danger that had nearly befallen two of its bravest souls. Taza and Nalin stepped into the open, hands still entwined. They were greeted with curious looks, admiration, and quiet relief. Elders nodded knowingly, recognizing the strength and courage in the pair. Nalin smiled at the familiarity of home, feeling the weight of fear and grief lift from her chest. Taza's presence beside her made her feel unbreakable. Together they had faced death, darkness, and doubt, and emerged victorious, bonded by choice and trust, and a love that had quietly grown between them. As the day brightened, Taza finally spoke the words that had been heavy in his heart for so long. "Nalin, will you walk with me always, not just through battle or danger, but through life?" She met his gaze, feeling the depth of sincerity in his question. Without hesitation, she replied, her voice steady and certain, "Yes, I will walk with you, always." A faint breeze swept through the village, stirring hair and clothes like the world itself was witnessing their promise. Taza took her hand in both of his, lifting it to his lips in a gesture both tender and solemn. In that moment, no words were needed. Their vow was sealed, stronger than any spoken oath. The village seemed to exhale with them, the sun fully rising now, casting light over a land that had seen both sorrow and triumph. Nalin and Taza walked forward together side by side, hearts aligned, ready to face whatever the future held. Their journey had begun at the stream, where grief and solitude once ruled. Now it continued as one, strengthened by shared courage, guided by spirits, and bound by love and trust. In the golden morning, under the gaze of ancestors and the open sky, their promise was clear. Whatever challenges came, they would face them together, their hearts as one. And so, the warrior and the woman he vowed to protect stepped into a new life, not defined by fear, but by choice, unity, and the unshakable bond that had grown from the shadow of danger into the light of hope.